I was hit by a truck and it made me really reflect on my life here in the US. And so I want to kind of deep dive my experience and also a bit about car culture and just how I see everything after living abroad. So as you can tell, I've been hurt pretty badly. I was in a hit and run, unfortunately, but thankfully I'm a lot better as the day of filming this video. So technically I don't need this, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys that at some point I did need this, and it just was really painful to have to experience such a big shock like that, especially to my body, but also mentally. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, I was hit by a truck on the highway. I was driving in a passenger seat, and this truck decided to come into my lane where I was driving, causing me to hit it. He hit the back, I hit the back of his car, causing me to spin out. And I slammed into the highway wall multiple times, which pretty much jerked my neck a bunch. And so, therefore, it caused me to have kind of nerve damage from my neck down to my arm. And again, I'm a lot better, but I couldn't do things. I couldn't use it. I couldn't type. I still struggle with typing. I still struggle with using it. It's not perfect, but some time has passed. It's been a few months now. So I definitely have gotten a lot better, but yeah, I just pretty much couldn't really do much of anything with my right arm without being in a lot of pain, especially also in my neck too. And then also my lower back as well, because I think when it comes to car accidents, you just always have lower back pain. Yesterday I was sitting at a cafe and I couldn't even sit for an hour or two before like experiencing more pain. And so it's just these things that kind of build up after you have these car accidents. And then no one talks about the mental aspect as well. I did have some form of PTSD, I feel like, every time I was in a car or driving again. If a car looked like it was coming into my lane, my heart would start racing. I would get very nervous. I'd feel very uncomfortable. And I do feel a lot better now, but even yesterday I was driving and I was still having some of those experiences. But just the more I drive, hopefully the more I get used to it. But it also really kind of opened my eyes to car culture, especially being in Houston where car culture is very huge, and especially big trucks, because I moved from New York City, and New York City people, you don't really necessarily have to drive, and if there are cars, there's no giant trucks that you have here in Texas. And then obviously coming from South Korea and Japan, um, there's a lot of amazing public infrastructure where I didn't need to rent a car. Honestly, if I was in a car at some point in those countries, it felt more like a treat because I just never used the car. I always just used subways and buses and walking. And so during these times, it allowed me to really kind of deeply reflect my time here in the US, because I've been back for about 3 to 4 years now. And I still am not used to car culture. That's just my biggest driver for wanting to leave in the first place, is because I'm just not used to car culture, and I don't think I ever will be. Um, but I took a bunch of notes down, to kind of just sort of share my thoughts on car culture, America, and why I feel like Americans are so disconnected. Because coming back to the US from Korea, I didn't realize how disconnected a lot of America felt. It felt very tense, it felt very angry. The energy, the vibes are just off. Okay. It just, yeah, I don't know what it is. I left in 2017. For those who don't know, I had lived abroad before, but this time I took a one-way ticket 2017, and I was gone until about mid 2021. So I was not here during the first Trump's election, and I also wasn't here during COVID, the height of COVID. And so I really saw America in a different way, because America was just simply different back then, especially as social media evolved as well, right? TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, those things. The America I remember didn't have those things. And so I remember really just connecting a lot with my friends and doing a lot of stuff. Whereas now I feel people are a little bit more disconnected. It's a little bit hard to form connections with people. And yeah, I just really want to kind of deep dive a little bit, but I'm gonna mostly focus on cars, just because obviously I'm dealing with the car accident. But um, but yeah, there is a lot I think it comes to America that causes the disconnect that I feel a lot of us have. Um, so I will start with the problem of car culture and how it dehumanizes us. And so when it comes to cars, first off, in Texas, I'm really shocked on the amount of road rage I see. People flipping people off. There was like a month where I was constantly seeing people flipping someone else off because I don't know, maybe they were driving too slow. And honestly, like too slow just means you're 5 miles above the speed limit in Texas. Everyone drives extremely fast here, and everyone's very aggressive drivers, so it can be very intimidating. But yeah, people were just very angry. They flip people off. People like cut people off. In Texas, if you're trying to get over in another lane, people will not let you over. Whereas I feel like maybe in other places, people of course will let you over, but yeah, I don't know what it is about Texas or Houston, but it's very selfish in nature. I find. I feel like the car culture brings out a lot of the nastiness in humans. And I think that also has to deal with America's hyper individualism, which I feel like is very concentrated in Houston for whatever reason. But it just is. And I think that's just part of, I think Texas pride is very much American pride in the sense of hyper individualism. And I think you can just see it in the cars. Um, Also, I think too with cars is that you just see a giant object. You don't necessarily see a human behind the car. And so when the guy maybe hit me and decided to drive off, he might have not expected it to affect a person like this, right? He probably didn't think, oh, I should stop to check on this person because I just hit an object, not the person inside the car, not the person that's going to be affected by this months later, right? But instead I just see an object. And I feel like when you don't have that face to face personal connection, or you just don't see people, it can make it very easy to feel that they don't matter, or it just, yeah, I feel like it just kind of turns the human experience into objects. And so with Texas, right, because it's not walkable and because it is very car centric, you don't see people. Whereas in, for example, like New York City or even like LA, even though LA is very car centric too, I feel like there's still a lot of pockets of people that walk around. But honestly, especially in other countries, you're constantly exposed to people, right? You're walking, you're seeing families, you're seeing students, you're seeing friends, people walking their pets. You can walk to the local cafe, and then right next to the cafe is your favorite restaurant, and then maybe you go to the little park nearby and you sip on your cafe, and everyone's around you just doing their own little thing. And it's really cool because you're just constantly seeing people, and it kind of reminds you what it's like sort of to be human and to connect with others. But in Houston, for example, because everyone's in a car, you don't really see people. Um, you only see people if you're running errands. Maybe you're at the grocery store, right? And then the only time you're seeing that person is like during the checkout, and it's very quick. And now there's like self checkout, so you might not even see someone then. So you're not really exposed to people like that. Oops, Siri. No, I didn't mean anything. But yeah, you're not really exposed to people like that. And I feel that can cause even a bigger disconnect. And I feel like that's what kind of concentrates hyper individualism, because you're so disconnected and because you don't see others due to car centricity. It's very easily to feel more me and more selfish because you're not forming those connections. You're not creating a space that is shared, right? It's more about myself, my car. My car is who I am, and no one else around it matters, right? And I don't know, I just don't really appreciate this part of car culture, and that's just one of the reasons why I am not a big fan. But I do know that obviously if this is something that you are have grown up in and you don't know any better, it's very easy to think that this is just the norm. But when I see it from the outside in, yeah, it just has caused a lot of disconnect. Funny thing is, like, even my complex I live in, you literally cannot leave unless you have a car because there's no walking. Like, I'm in a gate and there's no door like to walk out. So you have to have a car to leave. So you literally have to drive because I guess it's like maybe a weighted plate. So you drive up to it and then it opens up the gate and then you can drive out. But yeah, you just need a car to be able to do that, or like a little clicker, which is what I use because I like to walk. But even in my neighborhood, I'm the only person walking. Maybe one or two other people, they walk their dogs. But to be honest, no one is outside. And I think that is so eerie. I walk almost every day since I moved here. And I'm the only person that I see walking. And I'm just like, this is so strange because it feels like I'm in a ghost town, even though I'm in a big city like Houston. But I'm in New York City, I walk and there's a bajillion people walking too. I'm not alone, right? So it can feel kind of intimidating. Let's see. So my next point I want to kind of segue into is loneliness, social media, and the lack of community. And so I do think because of car culture and because we are so disconnected, we don't form communities, right? And so therefore we start forming communities online, but they're not really genuine communities. I mean, they are communities. I don't want to say they're not, but I feel like a lot of them can be somewhat fabricated, or a lot of them have, how can I say, maybe specific standards, right? And I feel like it's also wrapped in consumerism. So, for example, if we take TikTok, we can talk about, I don't know, cores, right? Cottage core or mafia wife core or something like that. Like these cores that are related to how you look or how you present yourself. And in turn, it's about buying things, right? It's very much consumerism. Like Stanley Cup is another example. The Stanley Cup craze on TikTok where everyone needs to buy a Stanley Cup to fit in. And it's like we form communities over consumerism, but they're not very much genuine communities. But it's very hard to form communities when there's no accessibility to be outside and to meet people. And so you want to feel better by buying, but also we are very lonely and depressed, right? We have some of the highest loneliness epidemics currently ever, especially experienced by young people. And it's like we don't have any place to meet anyone. So the only way we can have connection is through social media like TikTok or Instagram, but it's not connection, right? It's not meeting someone face to face and having deep conversations and talking about your life or sharing experiences together, right? It's just scrolling endlessly. And that can be so draining. And then it makes you wonder why Americans feel so lonely or angry, even, right? We are so angry and so tense, but our minds are just being overtaken by just constant stimulation, which is so exhausting. And we don't have any way to form connections with anyone. And so I would be very angry too if that's my life, right? I don't have anything but just being exhausted of my brain power. And it's kind of concerning because I feel for my generation and younger generations and also like even older generations also suffer from this too, because we just don't have any ways to make community or form connections anymore. And then we're also very overworked on top of that. And so, yeah, it's just really difficult. And I think too with social media, it's very centralized, and so therefore a lot of people are consuming media that might make them think a certain way about something, right? For example, politics is extremely divided, and it's so easy to get into these pockets on social media about certain politicians, and then you start believing certain things, right? um, You are constantly being exposed that, oh, black and brown people are the problem, or trans people are the problem, or men are the problem, or women are the problem, or XYZ is the problem. And we start believing those things, right? Because that's all we're being exposed to. But just imagine if you just went out and talked to someone, right? That was different than you. Like maybe, for example, I'm not trans. I support trans rights. It's very easy for me to support trans rights because I've talked to a lot of trans people growing up and they're in my circle, right? But if I am just constantly consuming media about how terrible trans people are, even though they only make up 1% of America, I will start believing that trans people are evil or something like that because that's all I'm seeing. But what if we just actually talked to people that look different than us, right? If you are of a different race, why not talk to someone that is a different race of you, right? Like I try to have friends of all types of colors and backgrounds and religions and cultures, because to me, it's important to have those connections with people, and people are just people at the end of the day. People, all they want is to just live their life and be happy and do things that bring some joy, achieve their dreams. That's all. People, for the most part, are not bad or scary, but it's so easy to believe that because of social media. And I feel like it's very pushed in social media, especially in the US, because we don't have as much regulations compared to other countries. And so certain politics can push certain agendas to make us believe that we are all the problem, when in reality, like if we did want to get deep into it, we are all the same. The people in power, the ones with a lot of money, are usually the ones causing a lot of the issues we have. But no matter if you're white or man or woman or gay or straight, etc., like we are all the same at the end of the day. And I feel like you can only learn that if you actually go out and speak to people versus just consuming what you see on social media. And then you become so angry because it's like everyone's the problem because that's all you see. But just literally go out and touch grass and talk to people, and you would just be surprised. We are we are brothers and sisters, no matter what. No matter your skin color, we are brothers and sisters. I am obviously black, but you know, I value my white friends, I value my Asian friends, my Hispanic friends, etc. To me, they're my brothers and sisters. So I think it's better to live life thinking that way, right? Where you aren't scared of people, but instead we celebrate one another and we learn from one another, right? Because my experience is going to be different from someone else, right? Um, and I think it's really cool to just learn about those things and just be open minded. But yeah, I feel like that's really missing in American culture. And so that makes me want to dive into, let's see. So yeah, that makes me want to dive into the power of third spaces. Excuse me, I'm going to take a water break. But sorry. So I would like to film this video without any edits. So even if I'm coughing or drinking water, make sure you take a water break too, by the way. Um, you can just see it raw, because otherwise I feel like I wouldn't upload because I feel stressed about editing. And so I wanted to keep it raw. But my throat has been a little bit, I'm not sick, but I recently discovered that I had GERD, and I think that's been contributing to my chronic cough. And because I have a chronic cough, it kind of strains my vocal, I guess, my vocal cords. And so talking can be kind of difficult for me because I feel very strained. Um, so I need to take water breaks. But yeah, I don't want to edit anything, so you're just gonna see me cough at times. But when I cough and drink water, maybe that's a good reminder for you to drink water too. Okay, so my next point was third spaces. So if you don't know what a third space is, Their space is pretty much a space that's not the first space, which is your home, or the second space, which would be like school or work. Their space is a place where you can kind of gather very easily and meet people very organically. A lot of countries tend to have a lot of their spaces. But for example, in New York City, Washington Park or Central Park can be a perfect third space where maybe I'm a university, right? And Washington Square Park is right by the university. But I can go to Washington Square Park and I could maybe run into my friends, right? And maybe they decide to want to get ice cream together. And so now I'm getting ice cream with my friends who I just spontaneously ran into. I feel like a lot of Americans experience this during college, especially if you lived on campus or around campus. I know I have, and to me, I feel like college is still one of my favorite memories of my entire life because I just was constantly exposed to my friends and it was very easy to meet up. Or if we randomly met up, we just had so much random fun that day. But when with car culture, it destroys their spaces, and so people usually just have their home or they have their work in school, and then that's pretty much it. And it's very hard to meet people because actually have to actively go out of your way to schedule, and you have to try to drive somewhere. And if you want to meet after work or after school, there's a lot of rush hour and traffic, and so that can be even like a bigger headache to have to plan around. And I feel like that's a big reason why sometimes I don't even see friends here because it's like, hey, let's hang out. Oh, I don't feel like being stuck in traffic, which is very valid because I also feel the exact same way. And so it's important to have third spaces where people can just easily gather and it's in walking distance, right? It's very accessible. Where I live, for example, there's nothing in walking distance for me. I really love cafes. I love working in cafes, studying cafes, hanging out at cafes. But for me, I actually have to drive. I have to take the energy to get into my car and drive off somewhere. But there have been so many moments where I just feel like I just want to walk downstairs, walk outside, and walk 5 minutes to the cafe shop. Like, that is all I want, and I cannot do that. That's just not a thing for me because that's how it is in most of America. And so third spaces are really important to foster those communities, and I do hope that is something that will change in the US. I think more people are becoming more aware of it, which is really good. But cities have to start designing with that in mind. And I do feel like that is kind of changing. I do feel like some cities are changing that, but as long as we continue to rely on cars, it just will be a lot more difficult. But yeah, I definitely hope that that's something that will change. And so then let's see. So then I kind of want to link that back to consumption and disconnection a little bit. So pretty much, I was saying earlier how we don't have communities, right? And because of that, we consume a lot. Overconsumption kind of sort of substitutes our lack of community and connection. But I also wanted to say how I feel like it disconnects us also from things and stuff and food, um, relationships, etc. So, for example, I recently have gotten into gardening. So these are some of my indoor plants, but I don't know if you can see out here, but I have a lot of gardening little plants, a little balcony gardening. Um, and since gardening, it has allowed me, okay, so I'm taking a permaculture class, which has allowed me to get into gardening. And I think my camera is about to die. So let me take out the battery, switch it, and then I will continue this. Okay, so new battery's in. So what was I saying? Okay, so I got into gardening. Oh yeah, got into gardening, disconnected overconsumption. So, and a lack of appreciation. So I started taking a permaculture class, which allowed me to also start joining an organic vegetable gardening class. But it's a 100-hour certificate class that I'm taking. Um, and it's allowed me to really think very deeply about life outside of just humans and also outside of just animals, but also plants and the earth and the environment. I've always been someone that's been very connected with the earth and plants. Like I've really love plants. I really love trees and grass. I think, I don't know, something about it just brings me so much joy, as simple as it is. But in terms of just growing my own food and stuff like that, I think it has been such a eye-opening experience because I do feel like we do have a disconnect with our food. For example, to me, ever since I started growing, grocery stores kind of start seeming kind of weird to me. I feel like it's very sterile, and also how the vegetables are grown isn't really that great because especially they use a lot of pesticides, which harms our pollinators such as bees and butterflies. And then we wonder why we are missing a lot of insects, right? But regardless, what I wanted to say is that I think it's super important to also form connections with the things that you have or things you want to think about, and just having appreciation for that. Something that I try not to do is because I have, for example, a smartphone, sometimes I easily can like toss it. Oh, I'm done with it. Let me just toss it. But there's so many people, I realize the lights on. There's so many people that can't afford to have a smartphone, but I can, right? And so, how can I show appreciation for that, right? That, I'm just tossing it, but to someone else, that seems very reckless. So, I try to be very gentle with my things, take good care of it. So I will set things down nicely, or I will try to, again, start gardening because that gives me a connection to food. And then with that, I could grow my vegetables and then I could give it to my neighbors or give it to my friends. And there I am forming connections with people because that's what people did in the past. People literally would grow stuff. Maybe I'm growing something, the neighbor's growing something different, and we exchange whatever we're growing, and then we're forming a connection, and then we help one another. But nowadays people don't even talk to their neighbors. I try to talk to my neighbors, like they're aware of me because I'm active, but I feel like if I wasn't or didn't try, which a lot of people do, I don't think they interact with each other, I'm sure they just know me, then um, then yeah, then what connections am I forming? I probably wouldn't form a connection. And then maybe if I need help or they need help, then there's not going to be any help. No one's going to want to help one another. And then we're more disconnected than ever. And then it's becomes me, 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 my house, my lawn, my space, instead of something that we share. And so I just realized like having a deeper connection with just things like growing my own food or having appreciation of my stuff. And that too, I feel like we are always constantly over consuming to feel that English, to fill a void, right? Because we lack community, we want to fill a void through overconsumption. But then it's like, do we even care about the stuff that we end up purchasing? Like I am a photographer and I have cameras, but I really value my cameras a lot. Like, those are really important things to me, right? I don't even want to call it like a person, but in a sense, I kind of see things like people. Did you know indigenous cultures viewed plants as elders? They were so respected. Plants were seen pretty much as people, like highly respected people in their communities. But now we don't even think about plants or flowers or where does our food come from. To me, it just feels like there's a disconnect between humans and the earth. And I feel like it's really important to form those connections too, not just amongst humans, but amongst life, other forms of life. But maybe that's something I can dive deeply another time. But I did just want to mention that in terms of my disconnection. I don't know if that sounded kind of strange. Maybe I have to gather my thoughts a little bit more. But if you feel me, please let me know because I think it is really important, and I feel like having this connection with life um, would solve so many issues. But yeah, we will talk a little bit more later about that. But Yes. Let's see. So my next point actually was a bit about indigenous practices and kind of what I mentioned. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of what I said. Being connected with the land, being connected. Oh, okay. You know what? I do want to add something real quick though. I think we are seeing the issues we have right now because we're so disconnected, especially with the land. Climate change is real. It's happening. Um, and it's because we are over consuming and we are extracting way too many resources. And imagine if we lived like the indigenous people where we only took what we need, right? That was what they practiced. We only take what we need and we give the rest, right? Or we let the plant, you know, keep what it should keep, right? We share with the animals. Like we live in harmony. My gardening class, we learned that when you grow food, just keep in mind that one third of it is yours, because one third it might not go well, and the other third belongs to the animals and bugs. Because we are in this together. We are in this, how can I say, habitat together. It's not just me as a human. You know, the bees grow the flowers, right? They pollinate in the flowers. The insects do their little things too, right? The animals also eat their little food and they also do their little thing. Like we all work together to create a healthy system. And I feel like that's what indigenous people really knew and practiced. And I feel like when colonization happened and things kind of came about more so like hardcore capitalism and just extraction, then I feel like the world became sick, right? The planet Earth became sick. But I think people also kind of became sick too because we are so disconnected from everything that humans started to feel more sick as well. So trust me, I there's something I'm trying to say in this, so I hope you understand, but who knows, maybe I'll go deeper. We'll see. But yeah. Pretty much now I just want to share some of my last points. And it's kind of crazy how all this stemmed from a car accident, but here we are. um, so, I just want to share some small actions that can make big impacts. So, what can we do to make a difference? And so it's not like, oh, well, now that I know all this information, there's really nothing I can do. But to me, first off, is sorry, cough, water break, drink some water. Okay. So, first thing I think anyone can do is literally just connect with others. Um, your phone is not, TikTok is not going to give you connections. It's just not. Same with Instagram. If all, it makes us feel worse. It causes us to compare, but we do need to form connections in some kind of way. So join communities if you can. Um, Houston has a lot of communities, gardening, art, etc. Join communities if you can, but also talk to your neighbors. Talk yeah. I don't know if you bake something, you want to get into baking or cooking something, bake some cupcakes, share it with your neighbors. I baked pumpkin bread one fall and shared it with my neighbors. It could just be as simple as that. Those little connections can make a huge difference, especially when times are dire. It would just be nice for your neighbors to know you, right? Um, but you would just be surprised. Maybe it means baking something for your friend, or if you're looking for friends, there's so many amazing ways to meet people, such as meetup.com or Facebook groups. I join a lot of groups and meetings through both of those platforms. And so definitely connect more, smile more, maybe have a small conversation with a store clerk or someone you're walking past. I don't know why, but I have this thing where people just talk to me about stuff. Like I'm literally in the store and people will just strike up a conversation and talk to me about something in their day. It just happens to me, but I appreciate it. Like I appreciate that maybe I give some kind of aura that people can just comfortably talk to me about their life. But I'm grateful for that, right? I appreciate it. And so I think sometimes it's okay to do those things. And maybe I try not to say, it's very easy to get into the loop of, hey, how are you? Good, and you? But I try to go a little bit deeper. Sometimes if I see my neighbors, I'll be like, oh, like what did you do over the weekend? Right? Have a conversation, right? That can kind of develop into something more than just like, good, and you? Okay, bye. Right? It could kind of dive into something deeper. So definitely that's one thing you can for sure do. Um, Definitely spend more time outside. I think we have a huge disconnect with nature, kind of like I was mentioning with plants. Um, so definitely go outside more, hike, go to your local park. Just a couple of days ago, I went on a small hike here in Houston and Houston Memorial, and I went with a couple of friends and my husband. But there's one girl who was there who was new, and she was so nice. She brought her dog, and we literally just was enjoying our time with each other. We're just like amazed by the flowers. We found some wild blackberries, and we're like picking and eating the blackberries, and we're just like so happy. And it's just so simple. We're literally just in nature. So literally touch grass, because I feel like touching grass can solve so many issues, and we need to do it more often. Um, And thankfully, I feel like more cities are trying to incorporate more green spaces because they're realizing that green spaces help with a lot of mental health issues. I don't know if you know this, but in countries like Denmark, when people have depression, sometimes they'll say like you need to go into the forest as a way to kind of help the depression. And I'm like, that's just amazing. Like that's a solution that doctors can prescribe. Whereas here, we kind of throw medicine. But I think it just shows that being in nature can really help us with a lot of mental issues that we have that we may not realize, because as humans, we are wired to be in nature. That is just part of our DNA. So please touch some grass. Let me see what else. And so another comment I have is invest in local community spaces. So gardens, projects. Houston has a lot of community gardens that you can involve yourself with. But yeah, maybe it can mean volunteering somewhere. Maybe it means joining a language group. If you're interested in learning Japanese, for example, there's Japanese language groups. There's one that's opening up here in Houston called Tadaima. I just randomly discovered them, but definitely check that out if you're here in Houston. But there are a lot that you can find in your city or town. So even if it's a small town, people be growing. There's always at the very least some kind of growing gardening community. I feel like that's just everywhere. Um, and I feel like too, my gardening communities, I can already see like they're making a big difference because they're sharing knowledge to people who may not have that experience otherwise. But also, my garden community, there's a lot of community gardens here in Houston where they are in predominantly in spaces that doesn't have access to food sources. They live in food deserts or food swamps, which food swamps pretty much means that they are only there's no grocery stores around, just mostly like Family Dollar, like dollar stores. So they have zero access to any non-processed foods. And so a lot of people are forming community gardens in these spaces so that people can have access to fresh and clean food. And these people may not be able to have those experience or the knowledge or understanding about vegetables, which is super important for human health. Make sure you're eating your veggies, okay? But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying there's so many really cool things out there that you might not realize. And so, yeah, that is pretty much concludes my video. All of this stems from being hit by a car, but I feel like it's really allowed me to really reflect on a lot of things. And I do feel like America definitely has the potential to be healthier, happier, and more connected, but it does take work on the individual level. Of course, systematically, to definitely not denying that, but individually, there are things we can do. We just have to take that first step. So I hope that this inspires you. And then hopefully, that I should become mostly recovered. Um, I technically do not need this sling. I was using it mostly because it is nerve damaged and I didn't want people to like bump into me or like hug me or touch me, because it's not broken, but it is very sensitive. However, I mean, now I've been kind of walking around without it, thankfully, so I don't really even need this as much. But I am still recovering. I'm still not 100%. And it just takes time, but I have faith in my body, and I have faith in myself to be able to recover. But I am appreciative that it's allowed me to really think deeply on a lot of things, and it has given me the time to just kind of do other stuff, which is nice too, like stuff I wouldn't have done otherwise. So it kind of worked out, right, in the end, even though I would rather obviously not get hit, but it has worked out. So yeah, anyway, I appreciate you watching this video, and if you have any questions or I would love to hear your opinions, just let me know in the comments down below, and I hope to see you in the next talky talk video. Okay, take care. Bye.